Hi, I'm Elizabeth Foster, and I'm the historian for the SWE Pittsburgh 75th Anniversary Committee. As part of this anniversary, we are interviewing members who have interacted with SWE Pittsburgh through a lot of chapters of their life. Today, we will be talking with Janet Henke, and she'll be sharing her story with engineering. So, to start us off, Janet, thank you so much for being willing to be interviewed.
I'm happy to be here.
So to start, we want to know just a little bit about you. Can you tell me some about your upbringing and where you grew up and maybe where you went to school?
Yes, I was born on July 14th, 1949, to James and Anna Rump. I grew up in Pittsburgh in the Brookline section. I went to Resurrection Grade School and then to Elizabeth Seton High School, a small all-girls Catholic school. While I was at Elizabeth Seton High School, my physical science and physics teacher influenced me to go into the sciences and eventually into engineering. The thing that she did that was wonderful was she made each of us do a science project for her class. And I grew alum crystals, which I loved. And I did all kinds of projects for her and in her classes, but that was my favorite. One thing that she did for me was she arranged for me to attend a metallurgy open house at Carnegie Tech, which is now Carnegie Mellon. And when I went there and saw everything that they were doing, I was so impressed. And I thought, hmm, well, metals are made of crystals. Maybe that would be a good thing for me to study. So, although Carnegie Tech offered me a partial scholarship to study there, it was not quite enough. I couldn't afford it. So, I went over to the University of Pittsburgh and I got a full scholarship there. And so, I started to major in metallurgical engineering.
Amazing. So would you say your teacher in high school was like your primary influence for you wanting to go into engineering?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There was nobody in our family that was in any kind of a scientific discipline. Um, and when I went to high school, I just said, wow, that's what I want to do. My mom was a stay at home mom, and my dad was a butcher. So they really didn't have a background in science, but they always encouraged me to do whatever I wanted to do. And they were quite happy that I did take an interest in science.
Amazing. It's wonderful the impact that teachers can have on our lives.
Yes,
Um, yeah.
absolutely.
So I know you went to college at the University of Pittsburgh. What was it like transitioning from an all-girls high school to the engineering classroom where there were few, if any, other women?
Oh, it was very intimidating and very lonely because, as you said, at that time, in my class, in class of 1971, there were only two of us that were pursuing engineering degrees, and the other lady, Patricia Johnston, she was majoring in electrical engineering, and so we never had any classes together. It was a little lonely because I was a commuting student, and so I just came to school, took my classes, and went back home. And so it made it a little difficult.
Yeah, I'm sure. And how did your male peers and professors react to having you in class?
Well, the students pretty much ignored me. Um, but whenever it was time that they wanted a secretary for the two technical societies that we belonged to, then, they of course asked me to do that, which I did. And they also would come to me when it was time to come up with an idea and plan and work at the fundraisers for the Engineers Week when we were competing against all the other disciplines to bring in the most money.
Interesting.
Now, the professors pretty much didn't say anything. They kind of just accepted me as another student. Um, However, there was one professor, for some reason, told me that because I was a woman, that I would never be a metallurgist. And well, here I am, and guess what? I'm a metallurgist.
Yeah, I'm sure it feels great to prove those people wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about your classes. Which of your metallurgy classes did you enjoy the most?
Well, the classes that I enjoyed the most were the physical metallurgy classes because it was all about the properties, physical, chemical, and treating of all different kinds of metals. A lot of my other classes were all geared towards steel making because back then, Pittsburgh was all about steel. And steel didn't so much interest me. And so I enjoyed the other classes that were more, I guess I would be chemically oriented
Okay.
rather than processing classes.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. And I'm curious, given so few women were in the engineering school, like how did you find SWE? What was the SWE section like
You
at the
know, I,
University of
I don't
Pittsburgh?
remember exactly how it happened, but there were two women uh, that were 2 years ahead of me, and they were involved in SWE. And somehow, I don't know how I ended up talking to one of them, but they told me that I should come and join their group and that I could be with some of my peers that were having similar experiences and had similar interests. And so, while I was a freshman in 1968, I joined the student section, and as time went on, I joined the professional section when I graduated in 1971, and eventually I ended up as a SWE lifetime member. So SWE has been with me throughout my whole journey.
Yes, yes, and I'm excited to dive a little bit more into that. So, some people might be interested to know that the the life cycle of the Pittsburgh SWE section is that we've gone through periods with great membership and great engagement, and then we've gone through periods of time with very little engagement. And when you joined the section in 1971, I think there had been this period of time where there was not as much engagement, and you and some of the other new members that were joining in 1971 kind of helped reestablish the section. Can you talk some about that era? Um,
Yes,
okay.
yes. In 71, when I joined the professional section, they were really trying hard to revitalize the section and find lots of things to do. And I think one of the primary people that pushed that was Barbara John. She was, I think, a civil engineer. She worked for Swindell Dressler, and she kind of assumed a leadership role and started looking around for ways that the section should get to work. And one of the things that she found was that you could request to have a national convention in your city. And she did request that, and we were granted permission to have that, excuse me, that con- convention in 1975.
Oh, amazing. Now, did you have a role in that convention, or what do you remember about hosting it?
Well, that convention, uh, back then, there weren't still weren't a lot of women engineers, so it's relatively small. I was the registrar as well as the treasurer for the convention because we didn't have a whole lot of people to do the different jobs. But we actually ran the registration, my husband and I, from our kitchen table in our apartment and handled the finances at our small local bank just down the street. Um, it was a fun time, but only 104 women registered to come to the convention. And so there was a lot of planning to do. Different people planned technical sessions. Because I was the treasurer, I really didn't get to go to any of those sessions because my job was to go to all the lunches, dinners, every place. And at that time, you didn't get billed later. You had to go, and as soon as they had a count of how many people were there, you had to write out the check. And
I'm sure that was really busy.
it was really busy, even for the registration. A funny thing happened. We had different tours that the ladies could go on, but they were limited in number, so you had to register for them and pay a small fee to attend. And so halfway through registrations, when half the people had already paid for their tours, the one company we were to tour found out and said, "Hey, we're not going to charge you for our tour, and we don't want anybody to pay to come to our tour." So we said, "Thank you, that's wonderful." But then I had to write lots and lots and lots of refund checks for the ladies that had already registered.
Oh no.
And the other thing that I remember about the convention was personally, it was a challenging time for me because at the time I was 9 months pregnant with my daughter
Oh
Karen,
wow.
who eventually became an engineer.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So we'll talk some about Karen in a little bit. Before we go there, I did want to ask you a question about someone else that I know you worked with in the 1970s, and that's Emma Barth.
Oh
So could you tell us a little bit about Emma
my
Barth and your
goodness,
experience working
Emma
with her?
Barth is a legend. I would say she is the most active of any of the ladies in trying to encourage the girls to go into engineering. She had an interesting background. She actually started out as a math teacher and she went to night school to get her engineering degree.
Oh wow.
Well, she was working, I believe it was at Westinghouse, and she was designing wind turbines.
Very
And
cool.
she was very happy to do that, and she was very good at it. However, because she was a woman, they would not allow her to go down to the production floor to actually see a turbine. So what she did was she hid a pair of coveralls in the locker, and when nobody's around, she would sneak down and check it out. And so finally, she got to see what she actually was working on.
I love when people can find a way around the rules, and especially in a circumstance like that where she was designing the turbine.
I know, I know, but as you know, we women engineers get around all obstacles. But one of the things Emma did for the society and a big program that she had was she would make achievement certificates to give to girls who were interested in working in science. And at the very beginnings, we had a relationship with the Pennsylvania Junior Academy of Science, which still continues today. But what Emma would do is back then there were so few girls that actually at Junior Academy of Science, if you're not familiar, the students have to do a project or investigation and then report on it at the end. Well, there were so few ladies that were doing that that Emma gave every one of them a certificate. And she says, well, some people might not think that's right. She said, but by doing that, I'm doing two things. One, I'm encouraging the girls in science and engineering. And number two, they get a certificate from a group of engineers. They see that there are engineers, and they
Mhm.
see that not only are there engineers, there are women who are engineers. And she said anyone she could think of that was leaning towards science, she would give them a certificate. And that was quite a process. I
Yeah.
know my husband and I were quite involved uh, with the different aspects of making the certificates and getting them delivered. But she had an amazing program. Now, I know today, in our current section, we have a fantastic certificate of merit program, which does a similar thing.
Mhm.
But what's nice about the difference is nowadays the girls compete for a certificate because there are a greater number of them that are interested in engineering.
Yeah, I know with the certificate of merit program, I think we had a record number of girls recognized, and I know that you volunteer on the back end of the certificate of merit program still. So is that interesting to see, how that program has evolved and developed over the last, I don't know, 40 years?
It's something that works, and so it goes on and gets better and better.
Amazing. So I want to transition a little bit. You brought up you were 9 months pregnant at the Pittsburgh convention. Truly, I can't imagine what that must have been like. But can you tell us a little bit about your husband and when you all got married?
Yes, actually, my husband and I met at Pitt in an English recitation class, but neither one of us was supposed to be in there. The registrar made a mistake and registered me for that class. And Ed was supposed to have his recitation section in the room next door. But as he went walking by the room, he looked in and saw a couple of the guys that he knew from his other classes. And so he thought that's where he's supposed to be. So, he walked in. And so both of us were in the class. Neither was supposed to be there. And then we were both commuting students as well. And one day on the bus going home, he asked if I minded if he sat next to me. And I said, no, sure. And so he did. And um, if you know my husband, he's quite a talker, he's a conversationalist. And so we talked on the bus on the way home. And before we got off, he asked, would I like to go uh, out with him ice skating this weekend?
Oh,
And I said, sure, although I had never ice skated in my life. And
I
so,
can't imagine ice skating for the first time on a first date.
and so, um, not long after that, of several years, and we were married on August 20th, in 1971, and we'll be married 55 years in this
Oh,
August.
wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing. What was it like being a new engineer and newly married? Because it sounds like you got married maybe right after you graduated or around the
I
time
got
you
married right
graduated.
after I graduated. Ed was attending Pitt, working on his Master of Arts in Teaching Physics, and I was working at Essex, which was a half an hour's drive from our house. And it was a fun time. Um, the only thing that I struggled with and I was really disappointed was that all the work that I was doing was proprietary and top secret. We were doing products for the automotive industry and they were very competitive. We were doing work that hadn't been done before. And so I was not allowed to talk about it. I was not allowed to talk about it to friends, to neighbors, to family, and not even to my own husband,
Oh
Ed. And I
no.
always felt so bad about that because Ed was always very supportive of me, both as a student and when we were married. And he also, he's an award-winning physics teacher, and he is as interested in the technical things that I was doing as I was. So that's the thing that was most difficult for me.
Yeah, I know I feel like I tell my partner everything, so I imagine that was so hard. Can you talk at all about any stereotypes you encountered as a woman engineer in your workplace?
Well, there's always a few things. There was some before I would do a project, my boss would have to talk to the project or to the plant manager. And every time I found this out later, I didn't know at the time. And every time that he would approach the plant manager, he would say, "Well, what do we do if she gets pregnant?" But my boss always talked him down from that. And then when I would be working on a certain project and a customer would call to find out something about their project, and they would put them through to me, and I would introduce myself, and then there would be silence.
Mm.
And then after a second, they would say, "I'd like to talk to your boss." And I said, "Okay." And I would transfer the call to my boss. And of course, my boss would say, "I don't know." He said, "You have to talk to the engineer in charge, Janet Henke." And so they would put him back to me. But I found the people that had the weirdest problem with the idea of a woman engineer were the salesmen.
Oh,
And they said, as salesmen, we like to take the engineers out to lunch and discuss things. He said, "I could never take a woman engineer out to lunch because my wife wouldn't understand." And he said,
interesting.
and it would be too difficult because when you would travel to a convention or something like that, you'd have to pay for two separate rooms because the man and
Mm.
the woman could not. Um, As far as working in the plant, I didn't have any serious difficulties. When I did, my boss was willing to help me. Uh, he told me that the people at the plant weren't so much resenting me because I was a woman in a good position, but because I was young. They didn't like that I was young,
Oh.
young and a woman.
Mm.
Now, the people in the plant didn't give me too much of a problem. I was always a hard worker, and I knew what I was doing. Although sometimes some of the people in maintenance had struggled uh, with me being what they perceived as at a better, higher position than they were.
Mm.
And so they would do little things like when I was supposed to be at the plant, they were supposed to leave the key for the tolls or leave it unlocked. And so, what one person did was he made sure that the toolbox was locked and that not only that, he took those keys and left on a fishing trip the day that I was supposed to go to
Oh
the plant
gosh.
to do my work. And of course, as I say, my boss took care of all of that. That was a little rough. There were no cell phones. But my
Oh,
boss managed to get a hold of his boss, who was the plant manager, and his boss got a hold of him and told him, "Get your butt back here and bring your keys and open the toolbox for Janet."
it sounds like your boss really backed you up and like respected you. Is that kind of
Yes.
okay?
Let me tell you a little bit about my boss.
Yes, please.
My boss was young. I don't think he was that much older than me. And he was a graduate of Villanova
Hmm.
University. And he was African American. Now, what you don't realize about that time, back in those days, not only were women fighting to improve, the African Americans were looked down upon. And one of the most embarrassing times I had working was we had our circuits designed at Mellon Institute. And so my boss took me down to Mellon Institute. We had our meeting and got things settled. And then there was a Webster Hall Hotel across the street that had a restaurant. And so we went in there um, to get lunch, and the waitress refused to wait on him.
Mm.
And so he said, "Excuse me, I want to put in my order." And she said, "You don't want to eat here." And he said, "I do want to eat here. Let me talk to your boss." And of course, the boss came over all apologies and took our order and we ate. But, he was a light skinned African American, but his face was red. He was so embarrassed. I was so embarrassed. And that was just horrible. But he had an excellent training and he was excellent at work. And the thing that he did, what I admired most, was for every process and project we were working on, the people that were working on it, he explained all the technical details, reasons why everything was done, how it had to be done, and the science and engineering behind it. It
Wow.
didn't matter if you're an engineer or you're just somebody that was going to run something through the machine. He explained it to everybody, and I thought that was just wonderful.
Yeah, that's remarkable, and I feel like that's a really exceptional talent to be able to explain things in a way that anyone can understand. Not
Yes,
everyone can do that. But it sounds like he was a great boss, and it's great that you all
he was,
were
and
able to
he
work
was very
together.
supportive. He was very supportive.
So I know, eventually you left that company. You were working elsewhere, and you decided to start a family. Um, can you talk about what that looked like, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about your kids?
Yes. Well, I was working at another company um, when I got pregnant. And so I was laid off. And so I thought, well, now's the time to try to be a stay at home mom. And so that's what I did. And we had two children, Karen and Daniel. And both of them eventually became engineers. Although when they were young, we didn't really push them towards science. We tried to influence them towards
Aw.
science. What we did when they were young is we made sure they had available a lot of educational toys
Mm.
and they enjoyed those. And also, we played a lot of games with them, especially my husband. We would play the usual kids' games, but we would play strategy games with them,
Mm.
games like Othello and chess. And they loved that. And by the time they were 4, we encouraged them to read.
Mm.
So at age 4, my daughter was reading. And about that age, we got our first computer, a Radio Shack TRS 80. Now, those were quite small, and you had to program them all yourself.
Oh,
And so,
wow.
so with everything, uh, with our kids, we always let them watch what we were doing, and it explained what we were doing and answer their questions. So one day we needed some supplies for the computer, so we went to the Radio Shack And we took Karen with us. She was 4. And while Ed was talking to the salesman, Karen walked over where they had the computers set up, and the manager of the store was sitting there working on a program. And Karen went over and she looked and she said, "That's not going to work." And the guy said, "Excuse me?" And she pointed, "Your program's not going to work. You forgot the period." And he looked and he said, "Oh my, I did." And he said to her, "Who taught you that? Your daddy?" And she said, "No, my mommy did." And
Oh,
we laugh about that to this day, the whole family.
what a great story. It feels
Yeah,
like like she was born to be an engineer.
pretty much.
I love that.
But I never knew
How
it.
did it feel when she told you that that's what she wanted to do, that she wanted to be an engineer?
I actually was surprised because we never encouraged her toward that. When I asked her why she decided she wanted to be an engineer, she said that she really enjoyed the physics.
Hmm.
Yeah, which I found surprising. But of course, we have an award winning physics teacher here in the
Yes.
house as well. So, but that's why she said she wanted to be an engineer. And our son, he's a mechanical engineer. He works at the Norfolk Naval Shipyard at the heavy lift cranes that lift the boats out of the water.
Oh, wow.
Um, he was always interested in computers, and I thought he would go into computer engineering, but no, he decided to go into mechanical, and he went to down to Virginia Tech. And I think the primary reason why he went down there is because his friends that he had played volleyball with at, at high school were down there going to Virginia Tech, and they were majoring in engineering.
Okay. Interesting. Well, hey, it seems like it worked out. Amazing. So I guess maybe something we forgot to mention is that when you decided to be a stay-at-home mom, your SWE membership lapsed, and that's something that was common
Yes.
kind of in that time. And then after your kids were grown, you decided to rejoin SWE in the 90s. Can you tell us what made you want to do that?
Well, in the 90s, I thought, well, it's time. The kids are older and doing a lot on their own. It's time for me to switch my focus from family to science and technology, which I really loved and I had missed. And so, in order to get back in the swing of things, I did two things. I joined SWE again because I really wanted to be with some of the ladies who enjoy doing the things that I did and enjoy the technology. I had a lot of experiences with a lot of other ladies, but most of them were not in technical fields. And also early in the 90s, when I joined SWE, I think and rejoined in 1994. Um, at the time, the Carnegie Science Center had just opened up,
Mm.
and so I decided that would be a good way to get back into the swing of things is to volunteer at the Carnegie Science Center.
Yeah, what did you end up getting involved with at the Carnegie Science Center?
Oh my goodness, that was a whole nother lifetime for me. I enjoyed the volunteering very much, and I liked the exhibits and the programs they were doing. However, I didn't notice anything that would be particularly interesting to girls. And I was always disappointed that when I was the Girl Scout leader for my daughter's troop, that the Girl Scouts had no badges or patches that were science related in any way.
Mm.
And so when I went to the Science Center, what I decided to do was to set up a patch program where the Girl Scouts could earn a patch from the Society of Women Engineers by doing 7 different activities, engineering activities, and I had each one of those activities led by either a SWE professional member or a SWE student member. And so the Science Center said that they would donate the space for the program free of charge. I applied for a program development grant from SWE National and received it. And so I started to set up the workshop. The Girl Scouts, their job was to advertise it to their girls, and they did. And so it was time for the girls to register. So we had room for 50 girls to attend the workshop, and we were flabbergasted when 600
Wow.
Girl Scouts applied to attend that patch program. And so we did the patch program, went back to PDG, asked for another grant, which we did receive. We got money donated from the Exxon Educational Foundation to help towards that so that we could do more workshops so that we could accommodate the girls who had wanted to come. That program was such a success, it received awards left and right. There were awards from the Girl Scouts, awards from SWE National, um,
Wow.
everybody involved.
Wow. I mean, it's clear that there was such a need for that sort of
Yes,
program. If
that
you think 50 and then 600 people end up applying, like
yes,
what a great way to showcase that
yes.
that's somewhere that investment
Yeah.
needs to
No, I did
happen.
that as a volunteer at the Science Center. Eventually, I got onto the paid staff there, and there I loved almost all the programs that I worked on. Uh, in the beginning, I managed the computer lab, and then I became eventually in charge of all the engineering programs and competitions. So I guess my favorite competition was the Future City competition where the middle school students designed the cities of the future. That was amazing to see the work that was being done by middle school students that were going to be leading the way in engineering. But my favorite program that they had at the Science Center was Engineers Week. And during Engineers Week, up to 64 different engineering companies, technical societies, universities would each come to the Science Center, set up a table with a hands on engineering activity, and host the people with engineers from their companies.
Wow.
And so I just
Were
thought
these what age student was interacting with these
all
companies?
ages,
All
all
ages?
ages.
Okay.
It was open for from the littlest up to high school age. And at the Science Center, what they would do is they would have field trips where the schools would bus the
Oh,
kids in to do the program. And I thought, oh, this is phenomenal. All these engineers and fun stuff to do in one place. But I thought, how can I make it a little more uh, money for the dollar for the girls that were coming through? And so we also had tons of Girl Scout troops coming in.
hmm.
So what I did was I set up a program where the girls could volunteer for an hour or two at one of the engineers' tables. They were happy
Oh,
to have the help as well as to see how they could make their engineering um, more liking for the girls. And so that went over very well. The girls enjoyed actually talking to an engineer
I bet.
and helping them out. And the engineers were very excited to have the girls to talk to.
Yeah, that's such an interesting way to help kind of foster that connection. Because, I mean, I didn't know any engineers growing up, and having the
I
chance
didn't
to speak
either.
with them is such an impactful experience. And I think that's a really cool way to help bridge that gap that can be there. Um, Something I did want to touch on is that when you joined in the 1990s, the SWE Pittsburgh section, we still had one of our charter members, Margaret Hayden Kiplow, and I
Yes.
know you had the chance to work with her. So could you tell us about her and what your experience was like with her?
Oh, she was a wonderful lady. And she started out as an electrical engineering graduate from I'm sorry, she would kill me, from Penn State. Um, she got her engineering degree while World War II was on. And one of her first jobs was developing processes to de ice the airplanes because that
Oh,
was a big problem when the fighters would go up and everything would ice over. And she worked on that. And she had a number of electrical engineering jobs, including one at Westinghouse. What happened when Margaret got married, she was told that she had to quit,
mm,
that back in those days, uh, married women were not allowed to work. And so if they were working as an engineer, they lost their job. So Margaret had an engineering career at the beginning. She raised five children in the middle, and then she went right back to engineering. And she was active in SWE the whole way. And
amazing.
so I worked with her. And in 1994, again, it was time for Pittsburgh to host a convention. And so Margaret, she sat there listening, and the planning was going on for the different things that they were going to do. And she suggested that we honor the pioneers of the society, in particular, the original Pittsburgh members who had started the section. However, she was not able to find any of them. The only two were Margaret and Emma Barth. So she said, well, why don't we look nationally and we'll honor pioneers from some of the other sections? And so the criteria was you had to be a member back in the 50s, a SWE member, and you had to be currently still a member in
Mm,
1994. And so Margaret located 10 wonderful ladies
wow.
who were all pioneers in their section who attended uh, the 94 convention and were honored.
How wonderful to have had the chance to meet some of those
Oh my
early
goodness, they
women.
were all so wonderful and all different.
I'm sure. And I am grateful you brought up like Margaret being an engineer in a time when getting married meant you weren't working anymore. And I think it's interesting to see how women's relationship with work has also changed so much
Yes,
from
it
from
has.
when you were starting a
For the
family being
better.
expected to stay at home and how there has been so much progress in letting people have the relationship they want with work. Um, can you tell us a little bit about the family legacy you started with women in engineering? So you touched on Karen, but I think there's another few engineers in
Yes,
the family.
I am very excited that, I'm a metallurgical engineer. My daughter Karen is a civil engineer. She's a senior project executive for Gilbane Building Company. And Alice, one of my granddaughters, just finished her first year at CMU studying ocean engineering.
Amazing.
I'm sorry, MIT.
Oh, no worries. Amazing. So, what does it mean to have your daughter and granddaughter both be engineers?
I find it wonderful. I'm glad they found engineering as exciting as I did. And I think both of them will have very happy and productive careers in it. And I'm glad for that.
How has their experience with engineering been the same as yours and also different than yours?
I asked each of them that question, and here is how they responded. Now, Karen has been working a good bit now, and she has talked mostly about business. She works for Gilbane Building Company. And she said one thing that has not changed is that it is critical to tell the young ladies that you can do it. And it's also critical that they can see somebody that looks like them in a successful position. She said that has not changed. Now, the building industry has always been very difficult and challenging, is the word
Mm.
she used, for women. She said things have changed a little. Um, it is not uncommon to see a woman engineer, a woman superintendent, a woman project manager, um, but it's not common. She said that when she attends the senior leadership meetings, very often she still is the only woman
Mm.
in the room. Um, One of the other things that she mentioned, let me see, now I've forgotten what was the fourth thing. One thing that has not changed is that women such or that are in a different uh, category like an engineer, they still feel the pressure to work harder
Mm.
and be better to prove that they do belong, to prove both to themselves, they feel they have to do that for themselves, and to prove to everybody else around them that they do belong.
Yeah, it is interesting how much things have progressed. And I mean, I'm certainly early in my career, but in reading um, and going through the archives for our section and for SWE as a whole, it has been interesting for me at least to see what has changed, what hasn't changed. Certainly the way in which I think we talk about women in engineering and how women in engineering is publicized has changed quite a bit from some of the early newspaper articles I've seen on our early section members. Um, but I'm wondering, when you reflect on your experience with SWE from, the late 1960s, early 1970s to now, what has changed about SWE and what has stayed the same?
What has changed is the sheer numbers, which is wonderful, an increase in numbers. And I think what is better nowadays are the ways that we're able to communicate, such as now with the computers and Zoom
Mhm.
programs. We can talk. We can talk to women engineers anywhere in the world. And the communication, I think, has really improved. The things that have not changed so much for women in engineering is that, first of all, their salaries are not equal
Mm.
to men yet. And they're still, women engineers are still underrepresented in both uh, colleges and in industry. Now, what my granddaughter has said, now she's in the next generation coming up, and she has just finished her first year at MIT. And she said at MIT overall is 50-50 men and women,
Wow.
but the engineering school is 43%
Hmm.
women. And she said that that's much improved. It's a 28% improvement from the number of women studying engineering at MIT in 2005.
Wow. That's a dramatic increase.
Yes. And she said most of her classes are fairly equal, men and women. She said there is one area, and that would be the computer science group, where the majority of students in those majors is still overwhelmingly male.
Hmm.
Now, the
Wow.
MIT community, she said, is very accepting of the women, and they don't look at the women any differently than men. However, as always, there are some outside people who grumble. She said they're mostly older people and
Hmm.
men that have not been admitted to the university who complain that the women are not smarter than the
Hmm.
guys and they should not have a place at MIT. Within the MIT community, she said all of the women are accepted and they treat all the students uh, as being exceptional and qualified, and she's very happy there.
Good. Has Alice joined the Society of Women Engineers?
Not yet.
We'll work
She
on her.
Well, no, she did go to a meeting, I guess, when she had her orientation, but somehow in the paperwork didn't go through, and so this year she was not a member, and she said she will try again next year.
Good. Good. I didn't join till my sophomore year of college. There's
There's so much to
plenty.
do,
Yeah.
and and Alice is on the MIT women's sailing team.
Oh,
And
wow.
so, and so she's been quite busy. I don't know that she's had a chance really to join any organizations.
Yeah, I feel like your freshman year of college is so much just exploring and figuring out what you want to try. It's a busy time. But I know we're kind of running close to the end of our time. And so I do have one final question for you. And it's if you could travel back in time and talk to those early SWE Pittsburgh founders like Emma Barth and Margaret Hayden Kippelow, what would you be most proud to tell them about our section and the state of women in engineering today?
I would be very proud to tell them about the Pittsburgh section and how it has grown from their seed of 11 to almost 300 women engineers, and that we receive new members every month.
Yeah.
I would be proud to tell them how vibrant this section is and all the fantastic outreach programs that are being done and the awards that our section has won for our programs and the healthy section that we have. As far as the overall on the engineering front, I would be so proud to tell them that SWE is now international with members, over 50,000 members in more
Wow.
than 87 countries. And not only are there so many more women engineers, a lot of them are in exceptional leadership positions. Some
Mhm.
of them are engineering professors. Some of them are presidents and CEOs of engineering companies. Some of them even own engineering companies. And I would say to them, all of that growth and all of that wonderful work, and the women nowadays are still as enthusiastic of reaching out to girls about engineering. And all that was started from that little seed that you, circle of 11, planted and grew. And so now SWE is a fantastic organization, and it's all because of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have a lot to be proud of, and I'm really excited to get to be a part of this section as we celebrate 75 years. Like that is such a
That's
monumental
amazing. Yeah.
thing to accomplish. And thank you for being a part of our section's history.
I was happy to be there for every part that I could. And
Amazing.
I hope to keep on, and be active as long as I can. So, and I am really happy to see all of the younger people that have come into the section and really have been active and come up with ideas for new things to do. And I just think it's wonderful.
Yeah, I think we are really lucky to have such a strong section here in Pittsburgh. It's been such an important part of my career journey. And I'm grateful to those that have come before me that they built what we now have.
And you will have a similar impact on the girls
Fingers
that's
crossed.
following. Yes.
Thank you. Well, Janet, thank you so much for taking the time today. I really appreciated learning about your story, and I'm excited for others to get to hear it.
Thank you very much.